are just thrilled that you could join us for the second installment of our special session, What's in a Name, which is a three-part look at name, image, and likeness, and the effect that it's going to have on collegiate sports and the athletes, student athletes that are part of our collegiate sport environment. We are thrilled to welcome just a terrific lineup of guests. First, I'd like to introduce you to Renee Montgomery, who is, of course, plays for the Atlanta Dream of the WNBA. She is a two-time national champion with the UConn Huskies, and also won WNBA championships with the Minnesota Lynx. She's also extended her career far beyond the basketball court. I was looking at your IMDb profile. You also, of course, motivational speakers, work as an analyst. So welcome, Renee. We are thrilled that you're here. And then I'd also like to introduce you to Martin Nance.
Thank you for having me.
It is so great to see you. Martin has spent 8 years at Gatorade as a brand marketer. He actually leads Gatorade's athlete activation team as director of marketing, and he oversees field marketing, channel marketing, equipment strategy. He's led the production and execution of several Gatorade's large global advertising campaigns. Before he started in business, he was a wide receiver in the NFL and has a Super Bowl ring. Are you wearing that now? Do you wear that everywhere you go?
Hey!
For the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I will not get into as an Eagles fan, I will just say how much I admire your being. And then after his career, he completed his MBA at Michigan. So we got a lot of baggage here but we love you, Martin. Anyway, and we're very happy that you're here.
That's right. That's right. We'll work through it all.
And he graduated from Miami University. So we are just thrilled to have both of you here. And then returning with us, my co-host here is Luke Fedlam, who is a personal non-agent sports attorney with more than 15 years of experience. He's going to be joining our call shortly, I'm sure. And he's a partner with Porter Wright. He leads the firm's sports law practice, and he regularly advises a wide range of clients, student athletes who are transitioning into sports, professional athletes, retired athletes, kind of looking at how they can move past their athletic careers. So we are thrilled to welcome the both of you now, and I know that we'll be getting Luke joining us soon. So we had the great privilege last week of sitting down with Karen Weaver and JT Barrett, and we kind of talked about what is name, image, and likeness from the legal perspective, and then JT was able to give us his perspective from his years as a Buckeye. Renee, I was hoping that you could start. I mean, you played basketball at the highest level. How much do you think name, image, and likeness would have impacted your career had it been in effect then?
Oh, I mean, it would have been huge. And I say that because I was a McDonald's All-American. I played with the USA team, the 20 and under. We won a gold in Mexico, I believe. So there was a lot of different accolades that now just directly make you money. And even for the example, this year, that this is going to be the first year, they had a list come out of there's money to be made with college athletes. Well, at the top of the list is a women's basketball player that went to UConn. So just that alone, that's going to UConn. So that alone for me is like, ooh, I could have had a payday.
Hey, Luke, we had such an amazing conversation last week, and I'm sure we have many people who are with us, but many people who weren't. Can you kind of give us just a very brief synopsis of name, image, and likeness, and what are some of the key issues that we're dealing with?
I sure can. First, I'll tell you about some of the key issues I'm having with my internet. So that was fun.
Hey, this is the new world we live in.
Right, exactly. So we literally were all together, and then for some reason, as soon as we're about to start, I got kicked off of my internet. So I'm back, and yeah, I'd be happy to just give a bit of an overview of kind of where we were at. So last week we really started to tackle this question around name, image, and likeness, and what is it, and kind of how did we get to where we are today. And so the conversation that we had last week first started off by talking about what is name, image, and likeness. And so this whole idea of thinking about, your name, your image, and your likeness, and how those rights come to make up someone's kind of right of publicity. And this whole idea now that people generally can be compensated for the use of their name, image, and likeness, and for the NCAA, without going back into the legal history over the years, the NCAA has a working group that has kind of brought us to this point where student athletes, it looks like here with in the 2021-2022 academic year, assuming that the NCAA approves the working group's recommendations, will be able to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. Now, With that, though, there will be some restrictions and some kind of guardrails along the way. And we talked about that last week in terms of the fact that student athletes won't be able to use the school's logos, the school's any marks in their licensing deals. There are certain things that an athlete will be able to do in terms of potentially hiring an advisor or an agent. So there are going to be some guardrails to help this process. But the other thing that I want to make sure that we also kind of go back to highlight is just the discussion around a lot of the conversation has been on name, image, and likeness through endorsement opportunities. And in addition to this, what this proposed kind of rule changes will include will be the opportunity for athletes to also have their own business and to start their own business in addition to this idea of endorsement deals. So sometimes we get caught up in this idea of it's only going to be about endorsement deals, but it's really going to be more than just that.
So, Martin, you've had played at the highest level, and I'm sure you have experiences with endorsement. What does it feel like when you represent a company, and how do you think that would translate when you're looking at maybe less mature people? I mean, certainly 18, 19-year-olds in college. I mean, we might even be looking at high school students now with endorsement contracts. What's the kind of relationship that you have with a brand when you represent it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm sure Renee can speak to this as well. When you're growing up as a young athlete, you look at, we all grew up watching Jordan and watching the endorsement deals that he had and he aligned with, and so many athletes came along, and Tiger, and you could go on and on down the list. And so as an athlete, to finally sign a contract and sign a deal, if you will, that was the dream, and I think that you kind of work hard and you aspire to that opportunity to be a Nike athlete or be a Gatorade athlete or, sign a shoe deal, whatever it is. I mean, I think so many of us have dreamed about that. So the opportunity to align yourself with a brand that you have so much respect for and have kind of looked up to for so long is just a dream come true in many ways. And I think this rule change creates that opportunity within many sports earlier on in the process. I think it changes how you think about sports and your responsibilities and duties on the field and training and everything else. So there's obviously the kind of the practical aspect of it, the financial component, but there's also a really significant psychological component that I think is going to be interesting. What does it do to the motivators and the kind of the reason why for each athlete? I think will change a way, and I'm sure Renee can speak to her transition from kind of amateur sports to now professional. That will happen sooner for many athletes, I think, with this change. And with that, I think will come kind of a shift in psychology that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback off of that. So like what he said is so true. So I had all of these accolades going in as a high schooler in college. And so it was almost like, yes, I achieved my goal. I was a high school McDonald's All-American. So now I get to play at UConn. And then it's like that cycle almost starts over when you're like, I want to do really well so that I can get drafted. And then, like you said, I ended up being a Nike athlete for 7 years. So that was the dream. Like my whole, to speak to the psychological aspect of it. Yeah. Like when I was in college and stuff, I'm playing for UConn. They're a big Nike brand. Of course, I know that I need to keep it going because that's part of my family. So like you said, now I can't imagine when things are moved forward. Even on the motivation side as coaches, like if you have a player making X amount of dollars, a lot of times that gives you a more carefree attitude. You see that the bosses are typically late as opposed to an employee. So if you got a player that's making a lot of money, they might feel like they're the boss. So I do think that there's going to be those side effects to what he's saying. And even to go further into that, so I'm an athlete and I was that Nike athlete, but I was never that Gatorade athlete. So now, that's another aspect. In college, I think that UConn is a big enough brand that Gatorade might have aligned with me for that aspect, because they could have got me then. And obviously, to what Luke said, I would have probably had to wear the blue jersey with no UConn logo on it or anything, but everybody would have known that that's my blue UConn jersey. And so then I could have made me attracted a brand like a Gatorade that I didn't attract at that time because you couldn't do that.
You know, we had a great conversation last week with former Ohio State quarterback JT Barrett, now in the NFL, and he talked quite a bit about the locker room environment and how it may be challenged. You know, when you have athletes, and I'm thinking, every time I'm at Ohio State practice, people are guzzling Gatorade. What happens when you look at the guy in front of you and realize he's making six figures from his relationship with the brand, and you're not? You know, the two of you having been in the locker room and in the brand world, how real is that potential, and how do you confront it? Go ahead, Renee, I'll let you to start.
I mean, for me, I don't know. So as a player, I think that's gold. So if I see my teammate that's standing right next to me practicing in the same practice in the same uniform and they got a six-figure deal, I'm like, okay, well, I can get one too. Like, that would be, I'm the kind of player that kind of stuff just motivates me. It doesn't necessarily make me like, oh, that should have been my deal. To me, I'm like, yo, they got the exact same platform I have and people are giving out six figures. Oh, it's popping. So that's what I would hope that that's going to be the environment. Realistically speaking, I do understand that sports it's a competitive nature. So somebody's going to be looking at six-figure player stats and they're going to be like, yo, I had 20 points last night. He had 10. What is this? Like, so I do understand that that's going to cause some problems. But I would hope that athletes, they should look at it as a drive. Like, that should make you hungry. That's what the NBA players do. They're rich already, but the drive is you want to have the biggest contract. You want to be the best, and then the money will come.
Right. So, Luke, you counsel a lot of student athletes, thank God. You know, I mean, it's important that they get the best possible advice. This has to have some, you know, we know that they have enough challenges, you know, from a classroom perspective. Their time is pulled in so many different directions. And we have a great question here about, you know, what happens when they have to start missing class because they're now tied to their sponsorships, or, you know, that time pull, now there's a whole other section carved out. How would you counsel someone to be able to manage all those pieces?
Yeah, I mean, that really is kind of, that's the life that student athletes live today. Their time is incredibly regimented and stretched and pulled in different ways. And to be honest with you, that's really what it is also to deal with it on the professional side as well, right? And you have various different obligations upon your time. I think the perspective, though, is going to be that brands who decide that they're going to get involved in the college athlete space are going to have to figure out what the requirements are going to be for the deals that they engage in. So the idea of a brand particularly saying, hey, we want this athlete, you know, to show up at 6 different appearances and to do these autograph sessions and do all this stuff that's going to require in-person time, it's not likely that that's going to be able to happen. I mean, the players just has too many demands on their time. And brands are going to know this. So, because what a brand doesn't want to do is to end up having to terminate a particular endorsee type of client that, you know, that's just not good for anybody involved. And so they're going to try to figure that out. So you're going to start to see things more like social media influencing and things that can be done in an easier way that fits along kind of the time commitments that player might have.
You know, I think, I don't know, I don't mean to project this to be bigger than it is, but I think anytime we hear money and amateur sports, it makes people concerned, right? I mean, we've had a lot of, you know, I mean, obviously with basketball now and the Adidas scandal and, you know, things that have happened make people nervous when it comes to paying student athletes. How do we kind of, what's going to happen? I mean, if money starts flowing, do we have a greater potential that there's going to be impropriety? Is there enough of a watchdog function? Is that still being worked out? And you know, I'd like Luke to start there. And then, you know, Martin and Renee, if you guys could follow with your experiences, do you have a concern that, you know, money could corrupt the system in a way that would really be detrimental to all?
I think the question you have to start with is money corrupting the system as we have it today. I mean, tons of money flows in and out of college sports today, right? Let's just be completely honest, right? This idea now that because money is flowing to the student athlete, that this is now that much bigger of a deal. yeah, in certain respects, it's a bigger deal because we're asking, you know, young people to make complex decisions based around their time commitments, like we just talked about in the last question, based on, you know, kind of the development of their brand, et cetera. Yeah, so there's going to be some tough questions that athletes are going to have to answer, but I can't believe that by allowing money into the system in a different way and in a different path than what we already see is going to be that much more detrimental. Are there going to be some growing pains and some challenges and some loopholes that are going to have to be figured out and things like that? Yes. Does a watchdog type of organization at this point through the NCAA exist? No, right? So we know, and they've talked about, you know, compliance-based clearinghouses as possibilities at the association level and things. Obviously, compliance at the individual schools are going to play a role. But the notion that this is going to all of a sudden just corrupt college sports is it just does not kind of hold water in my mind, because money already is there, right? And not just dollars, billions of dollars. So let's just make sure we're honest about what situation we're in today.
Yeah, I think one thing I would add is, you know, there's this perception that these rule changes are going to create a scenario where every starting quarterback in the country now has a Gatorade deal and a Nike deal and a Mercedes deal. And the reality is, you know, these brands, I think, are going to have to be smart and be selective. And there's going to be more opportunities to align with, you know, the starting point guard at UConn or the starting point guard at Stanford. But at the end of the day, there's only but so much communication that we as a brand can put out there. There's only but so much kind of brand partnership that I think we have the ability to execute on. And so I think that we're going to probably move into this thing with a little bit more ease and kind of gradual transition than maybe it feels like on paper, because it's going to take some time for brands to figure it out and for you know, athletes to figure out what brands they're comfortable aligning with and so on and so forth. So my hope is that we will just naturally kind of evolve and kind of adopt it in a way that is a bit maybe less of a shock to the system than maybe it feels like on paper. Now, that's obviously yet to be seen, but I know that as a brand, I think we're so happy with the partnerships that we have today. I can't see a world in which we totally blow up that model just at kind of the flip of a switch or the change of one rule.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I think that is the common conception. Everybody's like, what? They can pay athletes, student athletes? Oh my gosh, everybody is rich. No, it's not like that. It's really not, but I understand, because we hear the stories about the Adidas scandal and we hear different things of that nature where that's the first thing your mind goes to. But you got to remember how many players are on a team, how many athletes come through a program. The numbers just aren't going to be there. And you do have the players like a Paige Butcher going to UConn that has 500,000 followers. That's an outlier. That's somebody that's not normal. So of course you're probably going to see somebody like her getting a deal. You're going to see the mega stars getting some deals, but everybody, it's not going to be a free for all where like they're just throwing money in the air. It's not like that, but it does seem like that. I'm actually excited that a brand like a Gatorade or other brands are not going to just jump into it and make it crazy. So I hope that if everybody kind of enters into it with a little caution and is precautious and selective, I think that it could be successful, because as Luke said, there's a lot of money. We already know there's a lot of money there that, like, now there's just splitting the pie differently is how I see it. And so if there's already, the money's already being tossed around and spent, and now you're just slicing the pie just a little bit different, there should be ways to figure out how to do it.
I hear you.
Yeah, I think just to add on there, I think there will be a lot of opportunity created for small businesses that will be interesting. I think about, you know, there in Columbus or, you know, some of these smaller communities that can now access athletes and, you know, kind of leverage the name, image, and likeness of some of the players there locally. I think that is where you're going to see the most change and kind of the fastest changes, because, you know, the third or fourth player on a team might be able to sign a small deal and appear in a local commercial or a local ad, and both sides win. I think, you're going to have a lot more justification to sign, a college athlete to this huge mega deal, right? But some of the local small businesses, I think, will have, can find that justification a lot more easily than maybe some of these big national brands that we're talking about.
It's interesting. Santo just asked this question actually about, there's a lot of discussion around large multinational companies and brands, and we've mentioned Nike and Gatorade quite a bit, but in terms of that opportunity for smaller local brands, what's your take on that, Luke, in terms of how that relationship will be built, and how, I almost, I guess in some ways it might be intimidating, especially when we're looking at a UConn or an Ohio State, the size, we're so used to dealing with large companies. How would a small company start to interact with players in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, at the end of the day, you're going to have situations where you're going to see, to both Renee and Martin's points, you're going to see local, businesses absolutely getting involved in this space. What's going to be interesting to see is what impact does that have with the school and the school sponsorship agreements. So when you think about local companies that the school will go after for, various signage deals or other type of sponsorship deals, will those companies look at saying, do we want to go after individual players as opposed to spending the dollars with the school? So that piece will be interesting to see how that plays out. But the other thing that I'm going to be watching closely is how do these local local companies, maybe more regional companies, how do they get involved, and how are they prepared to do that? So there's this idea that I keep kind of grappling with is, will these smaller companies all of a sudden decide we want to do individual player type of marketing deals if they've never done that before, right? So is that something that all of a sudden now, because maybe they can get in at a lower price point, they're going to do that? But as a lawyer, that gives me some hesitation as well, because I constantly am talking about to individual professional athletes, to college student athletes, about understanding contracts and how that works. You're going to have these companies that are going to have to get counsel to figure out how best to draft these type of endorsement deals for the individual player. And when you have two parties who both are nervous about what those potential outcomes could be.
I think Luke's internet's getting a little bit of trouble now. Well, I'd love for Renee, for you to weigh in on Title IX. There's quite a few upvotes on the question about how Title IX and name, image, and likeness are going to intersect with each other, and what do you think might be some of the biggest challenges related to that intersection?
I mean, it's like I said earlier, I think a lot of people, when we even start talking about name, image, and likeness, the first thought is football. And so that's why I led with, there's a women's basketball player at the top of this list. Her poster valued at like $20,000 per post. I don't know how they come up with these equations, but there's a system how they do that. And they're saying that basically what she does holds a lot of weight. So I think with Title IX and how it intersects, I think that, I don't necessarily know. I think that it's all going to be, again, I think it's not going to be as extreme as we think. I think that there's going to be a lot of brands that are attracted to the women naturally. There's going to be local brands that are specifically for women. There's so many brands that are very specific for women, because women are doing a lot of upkeep. Like women do manicures, pedicures, we're getting our hair done. Women do a lot of products, use a lot of products. So in that aspect, I think that a women's college player should be very appealing for a lot of brands, and not just big brands, because we've spoken about big brands a lot, but like you said, I think that's when the local deals will come in. And even think about players who they live in the city or they live close to the city to where they were raised or born. Right. I mean, you don't have to be a superstar in that scenario at all to get a deal, because if you're the hometown hero that literally scored the high school record, broke the high school records, well, to them, that's your LeBron James. Like, And so I think that aspect, whether it's female or male, I think that, to Luke's point and to Martin's point, I think that'll be the biggest takeaway from this.
How do you see, I mean, from your perspective, Martin, and thinking about it from both sides of the equation as a brand and as an athlete, would you want the university to be managing this relationship in some way? Is that something that would be reasonable to have done? Do we need to be hiring people in order to facilitate these partnerships? And one person asks on here, how would I even have an athlete promote a business? So if you were a small business owner, how would you contact an athlete? So how do you see the university's relationship in this? And even taking it a step down, what if we did want to do high school players? What would be the relationship or the facilitation there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I think of myself as an athlete first, and one of the things that I think will be important is, feeling like the process is truly open and transparent, and that I have access to brands and brands have access to me in a way that is unfiltered and fair. I think one scenario that I think would make a lot of players uneasy is if the only deals they have available are ones that come through the school or university. I think, you'd immediately have a lot of kind of skepticism and frustration from athletes that are feeling like they're not getting all the deals that are available, or, things are kind of being managed against their wishes. So there needs to be transparency, but I do think the schools can play a critical role in helping to advise, helping to vet or provide background checks, different things that I think will go a long way for the athletes and helping them manage the relationships that come their way. So there's going to have to be a lot of partnership, a lot of support, but at the same time, a lot of transparency and truly allowing the athletes to make decisions for themselves when it comes to who they align with and how they go about that process. So that will be interesting. I think that, again, the schools will play a critical role. I think when you look at the high school level, I mean, we're so quickly kind of moving to a world where younger and younger, you're starting to know who these athletes are, and they're building brands for themselves very, very early on. And people are now anticipating not only the college decisions of athletes, but the high school decisions of athletes, or the transfer news on high school athletes is a big deal. Where are they moving, and what school will they represent? So all of that, I think, will be amplified a bit, because those decisions will have greater implications, both from kind of a brand marketing standpoint, as well as, on the field or on the court point of view. So I'm interested to see how that will all shake out. I think we talked about it a bit kind of in the green room, if you will, but there's going to be scenarios where schools or universities have deals, have relationships with brands, and the athletes that represent those schools actually have conflicting or competitive relationships. Take a Nike or Adidas, for example, or Coke versus Pepsi. You're going to see some scenarios that pop up that way, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how those dynamics play out, and whether each side can kind of play nice with one another and continue to work towards the same goals. So that'll be interesting. I think there will be brands that want to ensure that the quarterback that they're aligned with is truly the starter, right? That's one example, and how will that influence kind of come into the equation, and what kind of pressure does that put on coaches and everything else? So there's a lot of different scenarios that I think are going to pop up, and over time they'll kind of play themselves out. But initially, we'll probably see a bit of a kind of adjustment, kind of thinking through some of these unique scenarios.
It's something that, it's interesting. We always talk about Coke and Pepsi, or Nike and Adidas, all very respected companies. what happens if you have someone who at 17, 18, whatever, decides they want to be with a company that maybe isn't quite so respected, or is a questionable brand, or it's somebody that Gatorade has become involved with, and then they decide, you know what, I'm going to get involved in a brand that, that doesn't adhere to Gatorade's values. What's going to happen?
Well, even now, as we think about the athletes that we align with as a brand, as you could imagine, there's, an extensive vetting process, and we're thinking about first the character of that athlete and who they represent and how they carry themselves, and then the quality of product that they put out onto the field or court, and do they represent winning and championship and all the things that we hope to see in a partnership. And so I think those elements, those character elements, those qualities are going to continue to be like the initial filter. But I think the next layer will be what type of brands, and is currently, I'd say, we do this now, what type of brands are they currently aligned with? Do they have they had competitive deals in the past? Do they have a competitive deal now? Do the other brands that they align with kind of complement our brand and the things that we stand for? And so those things will continue to ring true for as we move into kind of new rules, any partnership that we consider, whether it's at the college level or high school. And I think that's yet to be determined, kind of how we venture into that space. But we're always going to think about, are the other brands within their portfolio or within their partnerships, are we okay seeing our G-Bolt logo sitting next to these other brands? So it's going to be important for athletes to think about themselves and the relationships they have truly holistically, and think about how one deal fits and syncs and creates opportunity or conflict with others.
Right.
I think, Nicole,
yes.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, since I'm back again. Apparently, I'm on this AOL dial-up or something. Like, man. So anyway, but I do want to add to what Martin was saying, because I think there's two ways of thinking through that, right? And it's the institutional side, and then it's the individual athlete side. And the institutional side, I do think that there are going to be limitations on what student athletes are going to be able to align with in terms of brands. So we do see it at the professional level in terms of professional leagues. There are certain brands that you can't engage in agreements with, right? So whether it's alcohol, smoking, cannabis, etc., right? There are limitations. And I think we'll see those same limitations at the college level as well. So there's that aspect, but that still doesn't take care of, quote unquote, other maybe not so favorable brands, as you mentioned earlier. And I think that's where there has to be the education for that student athlete on really understanding what develops and creates your brand, right? So let's think about this. If you're a student athlete, and you're developing kind of who you are and your brand in college, yes, you want to make some money too, but you also want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for the best success in the future. Whether that success means I'm setting up my brand for going professional and opportunities that'll come when I'm professional, or professional in something else, right? In taking a career type of job where, what do I want my image out there to be? So when employers, right, for those athletes who aren't going pro, for those employers, when they're doing their research and interviewing and things like that, what is it that you want to be aligned with? So there has to be this education that comes with it as well, of what truly does make your brand. What do you want your brand to be? Who do you want to be seen as out in the marketplace?
Absolutely. I think one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit last week, and I'd love for you to talk about this, Renee, we lose track of how many student athletes require scholarship externals, Pell Grants, funding that goes beyond what we might consider to be an athletic scholarship. And a lot of sports don't get athletic scholarships. The chances of being on a full ride at a university like Ohio State among our 36 sports is actually very small. So how would this affect them? Would students be at risk of, and Casey's asking, of not getting as much scholarship money from school if they come out of high school with endorsements? How do you think that might kind of sway the balance of whether students make it to college at all?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, what I think about that'll happen is, obviously you have to account for the money you receive. That's why they ask you when you go to college. Usually they ask you, what do your parents make? Because that's how they determine it. Well, they might have to start asking, what do you make and what do your parents make? Because usually when I was in school, it was literally about what did your parents make? And that you could tell, like, I mean, as athletes, we knew whose parents didn't make a lot because they had the Pell. So now I think it's going to change the process for how they determine who gets the Pell Grant. Like now, athletes they're their own entity. They're going to have to file taxes. So things that they had to worry about as universities, this is a player problem now. So what is your player income every year? Your tax situation, all of that's going to be a thing. So will it affect the Pell Grant? Maybe. As far as scholarships, I would hope that teams give a scholarship based on whatever they had their prerequisite requirements. So if they gave you a scholarship for $1,000 for books because you were this type of player, I would hope that they would still do that regardless of your money, because I don't want the universities counting athletes' pockets. So I hope that the universities do whatever they normally do. And if there's a legal thing about if you make more than X amount of dollars, then they're not going to give you a Pell Grant, that's okay. But yeah, I think the athlete's money is the athlete's money.
I totally hear you. Well, do you think, Luke, that we might see athletes not going to college at all? That if we're faced with, and he's an extreme example, but let's say a Bronny James, and we talked about him a little bit before, and the crowd that he draws as a high school player, why would he go to college at all? Why not just make money on endorsements, and then once he's old enough to go play pro, he plays pro?
So we're starting to see that now, right? I mean, so this year so far to date, I think there have been 3 high school basketball players that have decided to go to the G League directly instead of going to college and playing. And so yeah, that's a very, kind of calculated decision, right? So if they say, okay, but for the rule that prevents me from going directly to the NBA, I would go that route. So the G League came through with, as it's been reported, with increased potential salary, opportunity for endorsement income, et cetera. So we are starting to see that, and I think that's where this whole name, image, and likeness kind of arena sits, which is the understanding of the student athlete as to what opportunities they have, right? So schools are going to want to continue to win, right? So to the earlier question in Renee's comments, just to jump on what she was saying, absolutely. Like schools are going to want to still do scholarships because they want to attract and put the best package together to get the best talent, because they win, that leads to money, fans, and all the other things, right? And so student athletes now at the high school level, as they're making their decisions and evaluating, they're gonna continue to say, and I would say in ways that maybe they haven't before, what's gonna give me the best opportunity to achieve whatever it is I'm looking to achieve in life, right? So if what I'm looking to achieve is maximizing marketing income, etc., then I'm going to make decisions that are going to go that path. If it is, for some student athletes who very well may be top talent, out there, may say, I want the college experience, then I'm going to go this path. And let's keep in mind too, football has particular requirements. Now, I know we've seen different people have written open letters around what, ways to change football and the football dynamic, but if you're playing football, you still, to this point, you still have to have 3 years of post-high school time. So it's most likely that from the football perspective, you're still going to go the college route. So I do think that we're going to see a lot more empowered decisions being made by these student athletes as to their future. But we just have to make sure that broadly that education is coming with that decision making. Otherwise, the players aren't really empowered. They're making decisions in kind of, blindfolded.
We have a tremendous question here, which I think, Martin plays right into the conversation we're having. We've discussed about, rival brands. We've discussed about brands that maybe, don't fit the companionship to another brand. What about social issues? We certainly saw the reaction when Nike had Colin Kaepernick, and it went from as high as possible to, many, many criticisms. How do we handle that? We have these now student athletes who want to have an opinion and maybe are going to get paid to take a social stand. How would that factor into this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that that issue is becoming a topic that I think brands are having to think about more and more, having to consider more and more. I love the way it's moving in that I think, to the point that Luke just made, it's empowering athletes and it's putting the decisions in their hands in many instances. And the more accountable that athletes can hold the brands that they align with, I think the better. I think it puts, again, more power in the hands of the athletes. And instead of just aligning with a brand and kind of blindly following, truly be a partner. Come to the table with your own perspective and point of view. And I think athletes that warrant an endorsement and a contract have the right to voice their opinion and hold the brands that leverage their likeness accountable. We have some great partners, whether it's Serena, D Wade is a longtime partner, so many that use their platform in such a powerful way. And I think I've loved to see the conversations and the instances where we've been able to sit down at the table together and think through how we as a brand feel about a particular topic and how they as an individual feel about a particular topic, and then line up and kind of reinforce the message from both ends. So I hope to see a lot of that. I hope that, that will be something that will truly be kind of a more robust, kind of positive output of these changes. But it's also going to mean that both sides, both athletes and brands, are going to have to consider that and think a lot about kind of the character and the position of the other parties. You can't just see a dollar sign and sign your name without thinking about, does this brand stand for the things that I want to represent, and are they going to allow me to kind of represent my own perspective the way that I would like to. So the great question. I think there's a lot to be kind of sorted out there, but it kind of goes back to the basics of partnership. I think both sides have to truly come to the table with respect for the other side and be willing to and kind of vet out the other side in terms of how they sync up with their character or their point of view.
When speaking,
can I piggyback on that real quick? Just something real quick. So to Luke's point, there does need to be an education process, because what he said is very true. And as a player, if you're curious, how would you do that? Well, you can see how a brand feels about certain things without asking them. You can see what companies brands support. And then you can see you start to see a trend. So companies will reveal who they are just over time. So if it's a new company, obviously you don't have that luxury. But to Luke's point, that's why you can't fly blind. You can't just sign every contract someone sends you. You need to know what kind of company you're dealing with. What other players do they have signed? That tells something about a brand too. So to his point and Luke's point, just do your homework, because that will help you tenfold down the line when you find out, oh, this company backed this person. Oh, I don't want to be that information had already been there. You just have to make sure you research it.
Well, Renee, I'd love for you to jump in about, we have several questions about kind of a life management coach or someone whose job it is to watch over these student athletes as they're making decisions. Social media is kind of intertwined within these questions, and name, image, and likeness. Now, I mentioned to Luke last week we were here, I watched a documentary on the Fire Festival and the influencers who promoted, got paid to promote the Fire Festival, and then they got, even Kylie Jenner got sued because that was such a catastrophe. So what happens now with how your social media now gets intertwined with promotions? Do you as an athlete, would you have wanted someone, or did you have anyone to advise you? Is that the university's job? Do we need to hire people to do that? Maybe you can all talk with that. Renee, I'd love if you could start.
Okay, so two things, yes. That's why, so the Fire Festival and the Kylie Jenner thing, they paid her a ridiculous amount of money, like $2 million just for one post. The reason she got sued is this is now if you see all the celebrities, they put hashtag ad. So if you put hashtag ad, that basically for all legal purposes, it removes you from anything that might happen like that. That's how that trend started, where now you see if it is an ad, the celebrities are putting hashtag ad. And to that point, yes, because your social media and athletes might not even know, young athletes might not even know that's why people put hashtag ad. They're not doing it so they say, hey, alert, this is an ad. They're doing it. Yeah, newsflash, I'm trying to tell you something. That's not why they do that. So athletes may not know that coming up. And again, that's why it's the educational part of it. So for me, I think the social media is the whole thing. I think to Luke's point, when I was a student athlete, I was full-time for both. I had classes every day, Monday through Friday. I had practice every day. So if you want me to go and do an hour appearance in between classes and eating and workouts, it's not happening. That's just not going to be the reality. So the social media is going to be one of the huge platforms. And that's why, and it will for sure come in the fold. And somebody asked a question before about if you're a small company and how do you book them? Well, I'm sure that you're going to see a lot of student athletes now say, oh, management, you see it with influencers now where they have their management in their bio. So I'm pretty sure that all athletes are going to have some way that you can give them some money in their bio.
Yeah. And I'll say too, I gotta jump in as put my legal hat on, right? Because this is everything about what we're talking about right now has to do with the contract that is put in front of you. When I look at endorsement deals for the clients that I work with, consistently, if there's any social media component, I will add language into that contract that says that the company is responsible for providing any disclosures required by the FTC, right? Because I don't want it to be solely on my clients to have to come up with, okay, I'm going to say hashtag ad, or do I have to say hashtag anything else, right? So the company provides that, but again, that has to be negotiated into the contract that they're doing that. And to the last, kind of that last question around, the social issues too, same thing, right? So we don't see, I look at endorsement deals regularly, and you don't really see any aspects around the social side of a player's engagement, but you will see morals clauses and things like that around, well, what happens if, right? So let's talk about let's say it's a local deal and it's, I don't know, a local car dealership. And as JT Barrett brought up, on last week, what if the player gets a DUI? Right. And is that brand going to be able to sever ties based on the contracts and the activities? But let's not just think about it from that perspective. I mean, the other aspect is, what if you align with a brand where the CEO decides to take a controversial stand that you don't agree with? Right. Do you as a player have the power to then disassociate yourself with that brand? Or are you contractually obligated to continue to promote and support that brand? So again, the empowerment piece, to what Renee was saying, it comes from education. And to your question, Nicole, yes, players should engage with people who see this on a regular basis. It's self-serving for me to say that, but this is what I do, but only because it's important to know, like, this is how you learn. This is how you get protected, so you don't get locked in on something that you don't necessarily either agree with, or, we all saw Scottie Pippen, right? The entire world has watched The Last Dance now, right? And so we all saw, like, early on talking about Scottie Pippen and agreeing to deals early on where he just was so underpaid and undervalued. Again, it's based on contract, right? And so it's this idea where what if you are a student athlete that happens to sign something your first year and you're getting paid, let's say $1,000 for a couple tweets, but it's something that's like a 3-year deal, right? And all of a sudden you blow up in your next year in terms of your performance, and you get bigger and bigger, and you're doing this deal not getting really compensated for your value. So it's understanding the legal side of those things as well. The education.
Also, when we talk about mentors, your high school coach that has no idea what's going on is not your mentor. Your AAU coach that's been with you since you were 12 is not your mentor. I think a lot of times in sports, these mentors are what's getting people in a lot of trouble. The mentors want a cut of the pie. The mentors want to make sure the deal is good for you and them. They want to make sure that when you do the deal, you have to include everything about what's going on in their world. You need to get, and it might not be easy, but you need to get an unbiased opinion in the sense of somebody that's not just a family friend that thinks they know what's best. This is a thing where you could actually get in trouble if you don't read. Like, there's legal things now. So your high school coach, your AAU coach, your best friend's dad that used to play sports in high school, that's not the mentors we're referring to.
Well, yeah, let me add on to that quickly. I think that one thing people fail to forget when you think about athlete partnerships and deals and brand relationships, as Renee mentioned, the advisor, the mentor, the agent plays a critical role in that. And because of that, brands pay very close attention to who athletes choose to align themselves with, where they're getting their advice from. And that often plays a critical role in whether a deal gets done or whether a deal even gets pursued. I think I've seen situations where an athlete has representation from someone who's just not qualified, very difficult to work with, is asking for things that are unreasonable, and brands decide to walk away. And other situations where someone just does not have sufficient representation, and brands choose to walk away because of the complications that will come along with that, and oftentimes the headache for both sides that will come along with that. So it's going to be critical for athletes and student athletes to be able to show that they have the right type of advice surrounding them, and they are able to work through a contract and work through a negotiation in an efficient way. So that it's not just, I think protecting the athlete is going to be a critical piece, but I think the brands are going to want to know that they can sit down at the table with folks who have some experience and are business savvy and understand contracts, so that we can get efficient partnerships formed, and then get those contracts executed on. It's one thing to sign a deal, but we now need someone who can advise that athlete as to when they need to be here, or when they need to post this, or when they need to, kind of follow through on the obligations of the contract. So the advisement is going to be huge. I think that is going to be one piece that, there's a big gap that exists there right now. And so it's going to be critical that part of this equation gets addressed.
Well, it seems like, I have to be honest, I feel like this feels like a catch-22. So in the sense of it takes money to make money, you have to have money to get representation. You don't have money because you're in the beginning of these stages. And, Martha asked a great question. And I think this is so true of so many topics we talk about. And I'm going to read it verbatim. I think it's easier to talk about this topic as adults. We have to remember that we're talking about 16 to 20-year-olds. At the age of 18, do you think you were able to make these decisions then? So, what advice and how do we move student athletes forward if they don't have the money to hire an agent? All they have are the AAU coach or someone that's mentored them, but they need to make good decisions that are smart. If you think about Joe Burrow as the perfect example, not of someone who would have made a mistake, but of someone whose stock rose dramatically from 1 year to the next. So imagine if he had made these types of decisions based on being a backup quarterback at Ohio State, and then 2 years later, he's the Heisman Trophy winner, #1 in the draft. So how do we confront all of these issues? And Luke, I'm going to have you have to solve this problem in less than 7 minutes.
Let me give you 30 seconds worth. I think number one, the easiest way to say that is, I know we're going to be talking about student athletes next week, so be sure to tune in next week when we have more time for it. But I'll say too, though, listen, I do a lot of speaking with college student athletes, obviously with pro athletes, but also with high school athletes in some respects as well. When you can talk to them and family, mind you, right? Because that's one aspect of the equation that oftentimes gets left out. But when you can talk to them about the real world scenarios, we're not talking about just the academic of, this is what a brand is and how you build your brand academically. Like, yes, that's important, but let's talk fundamentally, let's talk about the practical side of things and using real world examples of players who have made good decisions, poor decisions, the impact that has. You can engage with them, and they want to engage in ways that are meaningful, impactful, and oftentimes beyond their years. Are there going to be student athletes that make mistakes with these opportunities? Absolutely. Are there professional athletes who make mistakes with these opportunities? Absolutely. Right. That's just what it is. But that doesn't mean that we don't educate them. Right. So and I think Martha, who was asking the question, was just saying, well, how do we do that? I think we do that. We engage with these high school athletes, these younger athletes, by making sure that their family around them is getting the education and that they're getting that practical education as well. And I do want to clarify one thing. So from a marketing agent perspective, typically what's normal is that a marketing agent, a marketing advisor is not going to get paid. So an athlete's not coming out of their pocket to pay someone unless that person is bringing them a deal through which they're going to get paid. Great. So, and if any marketing agent is trying to get a player to pay them in advance, because don't get me wrong, there will be schemes and people trying to take advantage when this stuff comes out. A player should never pay someone in advance for those type of marketing opportunities. But when the deals come, that's when the agent can get paid. And depending on the size of the deal, the complexity and things going on, to Renee's point, and to what I do, maybe there comes that point where you hire someone else that's an independent advisor who is qualified to give you advice on what's happening around you.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, I think when he speaks marketing, a lot of marketing companies come with that. So you'll see, like, for instance, a Jay-Z who's not necessarily a marketer agent. He has Rock Nation. They're a marketing team. They're an agency. They're your one-stop shop. So if you're with an agency or a marketing agency of any sort, that's something you should look for. You should look for somebody that's not only going to just be searching out those things, work for somebody that has a partnership with a law firm that they can bounce ideas off of, work with somebody that basically already has an infrastructure that you can enter into. That's how I like it. Like, I don't like when I have to go to 10 different people for 10 different things. I like to go to one person for 10 things. And even if that thing's not their thing, they have somebody that they can call and somebody that they're connected to it can be their thing. So for me, yes, what Luke said, and just, it's all about being informed. So if you haven't noticed anything I say, a lot of times when athletes get in trouble, we don't like to read the fine print. We want to just sign. We want to, and I've done it. As soon as I get a contract, the first thing I flip through is to see the numbers. I want to make sure that what we talked about is in there. Like, literally, as athletes, we look at the numbers. Okay, they gonna pay me what I said they gonna pay me. And then that's all we kind of look at. Look at everything else, please, because now it's gonna get it's gonna get fuzzy in a sense where there's gonna be a lot of people trying to come at all the athletes because everybody sees it as a payday. Just educate yourself.
That's right. And I think to Nicole, you asked the question earlier kind of about the role of the universities and schools. I think that's where they can step in and play a critical role, offering really informed education opportunities and robust education for athletes early on, really day one, for student athletes, so that they can understand some of the basics, some of the fundamentals, some of the kind of foundational things that will help them make those informed decisions and identify the right types of advisors and kind of vet out the people that they're going to have to interact with and engage along the way. So that to me is a responsibility that the universities need to take on really right out of the gate for student athletes.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think we could have ended on a better note, and I'm glad Luke plugged it. I'm going to plug it one more time. We have one more session. I know we had a few more questions left. I'm going to make sure that we save those for next week because a lot of them have to do with student athletes specifically, and we're going to be bringing some student athletes and the student athlete perspective into our last session of What's in a Name, and we very much hope that you'll join us for part 3. Please know that this coming Thursday, we also have a session where we're meeting with the voices of the Columbus Blue Jackets. So we're inviting Jean-Luc Grandpierre, Bob McElligott, and Jeff Svoboda to join us and talk about hockey. And I don't know about you, I'm desperate to talk about hockey right now in this dearth of hockey. Every Thursday, Sports and Society is privileged to bring to you conversations where sport and society intersect with each other. And we are thrilled that you could join us for this very special edition. We are grateful to Martin, grateful to Renee, always grateful to Luke for his support, and I look forward to seeing him next week, and I look forward to seeing all of you. So please keep your questions coming. We'll continue to get answers next week, and we hope that you all have a safe and healthy week, and we'll see you on hopefully this Thursday, and if not, we'll see you Tuesday. Thanks for being here.
Go Huskies.
Thank you all.
I see how you got that in there.
That was a good one. I'll see you guys. Have a great day.
All right.
Thanks, guys.